A tax collector working for a local crime lord finds his family's safety compromised when the rival of his boss shows up to LA and upends the business. What's up, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot here today to talk about the new crime thriller David Ayer film, The Tax Collector. Very excited to let you all know what I thought about this film, and more importantly, if you should check it out. Before we dive into this spoiler-free review, as you all can see on the screen now, make sure you are following me on all my other social media accounts. That way you can stay up to date with what's going on here at Movie Files. Make sure if you're new to this channel that you subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of that new content. Give this video a thumbs up. Helps out the channel tremendously, but I also really appreciate it. And last but not least, let me know in the comments, were you excited for The Tax Collector? What did you think about the film? Let me know your pros, your cons, and was this one of your better David Ayer films or maybe not so better David Ayer films? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. So first and foremost, when I saw this trailer, the trailer didn't work for me. The two things that sold me was, number one, David Ayer, minus his last two films, which have been definitely a mixed bag from people liking it and not liking it. They've been successful on the Netflix platform like Bright, and of course, you know, the Oscar-winning Suicide Squad, which I'll be doing a watch-along this Saturday. Quick little plug there. But, you know, David Ayer, man, I'm a fan of his work for the most part, and also Shia LaBeouf. I've always been a fan of his, even during his darker times. I love that he's coming back up with Peanut Butter Falcon and obviously Honey Boy and many things that I'm looking forward to in the future. So those were my two selling points. So as I do with all my reviews, ladies and gentlemen, I start off with the positives. Starting off with the man, David Ayer, right? We'll get to him on both sides, the positives and negatives, but mostly focus on the positive here. I think that this is kind of harkens back to what made him the director that we all knew and kind of grew to love, right? I think of his earlier works with writing things like Training Day, you know, directing Harsh Times, Street Kings, and he has a very, David Ayer plays within a certain sandbox, right, that he's really good at. I think of movies that deal with camaraderie, teamwork, family, brotherhood. You know, he comes from a Navy background, and you can kind of tell that he brings that mindset into his filmmaking. Most of the time you see his crew, they all love each other, they all kind of band together, so he plays within a certain sandbox, and when he's in that sandbox, I think that's where he shines. And in this film, you have David and Shia LaBeouf. You have, you know, David as our main character, who's the tax collector, who's the son of this big boss who's now in jail, kind of put away, but his son's kind of picking up the pieces for his dad. And then you have Shia LaBeouf's character, Creeper, who we'll talk about positively and negatively, but they're just collecting their taxes, right? They control over 43 different gangs within the LA area, and you're seeing them doing a day-to-day life type of situation, especially in that first half, and that's something I definitely want to commend. David Ayer, regardless of his last few maybe mixed films, he always does a really, in my opinion, he sets up his films really well. Sometimes the second and third acts don't land as perfectly as you would like them, but I always like his setups, and I like how we meet David. You know, we see that duality of David between his street life and his family life, and then Creeper, you know, seeing him being intimidating. Right, they're going and collecting their taxes. They put on the front. You know, they're nice to some people, mean to other people. So I like how the film kind of sets up their kind of, you know, end of watch type of vibes. Even Bright with, you know, again, him working with two people, interacting with each other. I think of Training Day, right? You know, you think of Denzel Washington, Ethan Hawke's character. So that has those type of sensibilities within this film, which I think, again, David Ayer shines in. We'll talk about the second act. First act was really strong, but that third act really did kind of entertain me. It gets completely off the rail. There won't be any hashtag release the Ayer cut because this is a full David Ayer Unleashed type of film. He goes really, really ultra violent towards that third act, which I found to be very entertaining. You kind of know what you're getting into with this type of film, a crime thriller. We've seen the tropes, we've seen the story before, but I like the kind of the action revenge type story that we get in that third act. Going into some of these performances on a positive level, again, we talk about David's character played by Bobby Soto, who this is my first time being exposed to him. I thought he was a pretty solid lead in this film. Again, he is the lead, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't a spoiler. This is not a Shia LaBeouf fueled, you know, led film. He's a supporting character, and we'll talk about him in a bit. But I thought Bobby Soto did a good job as Michael. Again, you're seeing the duality. His street life, how he's a good guy at home, you know, he's a good dad, good husband, but when he's on those streets, he's a different character, and he has this relationship with his father that I won't get into too much details, but there's another side of David's character that I really like that they explored, and I thought the actor, you know, did a good job when, you know, certain things were asked of him in that role. We'll talk about Shia LaBeouf here in a positive moment. Again, I'm a big fan of his work. He is a method actor. I'm going to tell you guys right now, again, mild spoiler, that whole tattoo fiasco of him getting tattooed plays no part in this film whatsoever. You see it for maybe 10 seconds. It kind of reminded me of the Henry Cavill mustache. It wasn't an integral part in Fallout. Jared Leto type of approach where you thought you were going to get him a lot in the film when he's really not in the film that much. He's a good supporting character. You don't get to know that much about Creeper. He is a white man in a predominantly Latino kind of, inner city of LA type of approach, and you don't really know how Creeper was able to get in this crowd, in this mixed crowd. David Ayer kind of touched on it in regards to his personal life, how he knew different ethnicities that rolled around with different crew members and how they were able to work their way up to the certain position that they're in. But this film doesn't really explore that, which I wish they would have. But I thought Shia LaBeouf did a good job in the role that he was given, even though I thought, and I'll get to him a little bit later, but I thought that he was fine. Transitioning into some of my criticisms, I can nitpick about the editing, the song choices at certain points where I thought that they picked a certain song to kind of invoke a certain emotion on you, and I didn't think that worked. I just wish that they relied more on the acting than slowing down the music and doing this melodramatic type of approach, and I'll talk about that later. But there's some things I can nitpick, but really the thing that kind of the flaws for me in this film is, even though I praise David Ayer playing to his sensibilities, he's also his worst enemy. I think that David Ayer, he wrote this film. Again, he's written some great films, but he's also has some moments where it's just like he plays into the tropes. He really has some dull dialogue. I mentioned the first half is a really good setup. The second half is a pretty entertaining, conclusion to the film. But that second act, man, I think that's where David Ayer really kind of plays into his bad tropes, where, again, it's repetitive, it's predictable, the dialogue is very bland, and the character seems to be very undeveloped. We get the introduction of our quote-unquote villain in this second half, and I thought that's when the film kind of took a dip in quality, because I thought that villain was way too cartoonish. There's a lot of cartoonish type of characters where, again, I felt like David Ayer, man, it almost felt like he has two different personalities as a director. Again, he plays to his strengths, but then there's this other side of David Ayer that's just almost, and again, there's no offense to him because I'm a fan of his, but it almost feels like very amateur level type of writing and directing in particularly in that second act of the film, which I think is the weakest part of the film. And I mentioned Shia LaBeouf's character in the positives, but also in the negative. Him being intimidating, because you see Shia LaBeouf, again, him and David collecting their taxes. They try to be intimidating. I found David's character to be kind of a middle of the road. Like, you knew he was, he goes about his way in a certain approach, and people respect that about him, right? And you see that in this film. But then, when it comes to Creeper, you just got Shia LaBeouf chewing on something, kind of, his glasses on. I didn't find Shia LaBeouf's character to be intimidating whatsoever, but I did like their kind of camaraderie, their brotherhood, and how Creeper kind of looked up to David and kind of wanted his, his family life, right? But I thought Shia LaBeouf, man, I thought he was kind of underutilized. I would have liked to have learned more about Shia LaBeouf's character, how he got in a position that he did. Again, you're seeing in this movie, he's not Latino, he's not Mexican, so he's in these rooms with these high boss type of crime lords, and they're not looking him in the eye, right? He's always standing up behind David. He's kind of the bodyguard, kind of the linchman of David, but he doesn't necessarily have that same level of respect as David has. So I would have loved to have seen how Shia LaBeouf got in the mix, how he's perceived within this community, and he really don't play into that in this film. So those are some other things, the underdevelopment of certain characters, and particularly Shia LaBeouf's character. Again, probably the biggest thing for me in this film with criticism, the melodramatic moments, the music cues, the slow motion of like crying, yelling, these like really almost music video-ish type of montage that I just thought kind of fell flat for me. It took me out of the film. Again, it's mostly highlighted in that second act, some in the third act, but mostly in that second half of the film, where things kind of go awry and we get our villain. So I don't know, man. Like I said, I feel like David Ayer has two different types of approach where he plays to his strengths, but then he gets in this kind of weird state of mind where it's just very predictable, very tropey, and just flat out just kind of underwhelming. So with that being said, I can see, again, I know what I was getting into. It delivered in that first half of the setup. You get to meet these characters. You see their day in life. You see their camaraderie, their brotherhood. The second act is the weakest part to me. The third act kind of picks up, and again, it gets really off the walls, bonkers, like hardcore, ultra violence in that third act, which I enjoyed. But again, when you look at the film as a whole, it really doesn't work all together. So for me, I'm going to give this film a 2.8 out of 5. It's not in that bright Suicide Squad type of levels as far as kind of his worst writing, some of his worst directing, but it's kind of in that bunch, but it's definitely nowhere near Fury, End of Watch. So I'm hoping that this film kind of pushes David Ayer in that direction that we all come to love him in. And I think him going back to his older things that he plays well into could lead into future things. I think his next film is The Dirty Dozen. So again, I'm still a fan of David Ayer. I wish that Shia LaBeouf was implemented more in this film, but I thought that Bobby as Michael did a good job as our lead. So 2.8 out of 5. That's just my thoughts. I would love to know your thoughts on this film when you see it. If you've seen it, let me know your pros, your cons. Do you think this is one of David Ayer's better films? Do you think this is one of his worst films? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So as always, like this video, share this video, and also subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell so you don't miss any of my new content. I got reviews for She Dies Tomorrow on my channel now. We have the Doom Patrol season finale. We have a watch along for David Ayer's Suicide Squad this Saturday, August 8th at 7 p.m. So I hope to see you all there. Thank you for watching this review. Stay safe, and we'll see you soon.